Good afternoon, students. I hope all of you are doing good and I hope your preparation is going fine. Welcome to today's Analyst. This is 14th of January 2024 and we are here to discuss important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, the handout of the session is there in the description box. You may use it to streamline your current affairs preparation. The first topic of today is related to International Court of Justice and the powers and the functions associated with ICJ. The second topic is related to the foreign investment scenario in India. The third topic is related to applications of artificial intelligence in various spectrums in various sectors. Last but not the least is related to EPFO. So let's start with the first topic. The first topic is related to International Court of Justice. Now, International Court of Justice is currently hearing a case which has been filed by South Africa accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. So ICJ, that is why becomes very, very important. The powers and the functions primarily of ICJ becomes very, very important for us to understand. And also in your general studies paper 2, international relations, important international institutions have been mentioned. So in relation to that, you have to understand what is ICJ and what are its functions, roles and responsibilities. Now coming directly to the topic. Now this International Court of Justice, as the name is suggesting, is the principal judicial organ which is under your United Nations. Now, since it is the principal organization of judicial nature under UN, that is why it is also known as World Court, right? And it was set up in June of 1945. Under what statute? Under the Charter of United Nations. And it began its work in April of 1946. So it was set up in June 1945 under the Charter of the UN, and it began its formal working in April of 1946. Now, the permanent seat of this International Court of Justice is at a place known as Peace Palace, which is there in The Hague, Netherlands. Right? So the headquarters of the seat of this International Court of Justice, it is in The Hague, Netherlands, at a place known as Peace Palace. And one more thing which is very important for us to note here is that it is the only principal organ of United Nations out of the six principal organs of UN. It is the only principal organ of UN which is not located in New York, USA. So it's the only organ it's the only principal organ of United Nations which is not headquartered in your New York, USA. So where it is headquartered? It is headquartered in The Hague, Netherlands. Right? Now, the hearings of this International Court of Justice, they are always public in nature. Right? That is, there are no private hearings in International Court of Justice. And what are the official languages which are followed in ICJ? First one is your French. Second is English. Now what we need to understand in relation to the functions is that what are the two type of cases which the ICJ entertains. So the first type of cases is what we call as contentious cases. And the second type of cases are advisory proceedings. Now let's understand what are contentious cases and what are advisory proceedings. So first type, contentious cases. It involves legal disputes, that is disputes which are legal in nature between the states submitted to it by the ICJ. So that means they are the legal disputes involving two states. States here means countries. So ICJ takes up one type of cases, that is the contentious cases, which is involving legal disputes between two countries, right? And both of the countries have to approach to ICJ for ICJ to hear that particular case, right? That is contentious case. Second is advisory hearing. So ICJ, now also a lot of organs, requests for advisory opinions is given to the ICJ. So a lot of organizations of UN, they request ICJ for advisory opinions. Now advisory opinions on what? On legal questions, right? So second type of cases which they entertain, they are the requests for advisory opinions on legal questions referred to it by the UN organs and specialized agencies. So first type, that is the contentious case. Second type, that is the advisory proceedings. Contentious case goes to the ICJ on behalf of two countries, right? Whenever they are having any legal dispute. And advisory proceedings, the UN specialized agencies or UN organs or any other specialized agencies, they can approach International Court of Justice for any advisory opinions which they might seek in future. So advisory opinions on what? On legal questions, right? So the legal question on the advisory opinions, they can be referred to the ICJ by the UN organs or specialized agencies. I hope this is clear. So two type of cases which ICJ entertains: contentious and advisory. Now coming on to the real powers and functions under these contentious and advisory cases. So only states. Now, what are the states? Either the member of United Nations, that is the countries which are the member of United Nations, or other states which becomes parties to the statute of the court or accepted jurisdiction under certain conditions. So only those states which are there in the bracket mentioned here, only those states may be parties to the contentious cases. So any other state which is outside of this ambit here, which is outside of this particular ambit, cannot go to the ICJ for contentious cases. So only the states which are mentioned here may be the parties to the contentious case in case of International Court of Justice. And who can go for the advisory proceedings? So it is only open to the 5 organs of United Nations and 16 specialized agencies of the UN family or the affiliated organizations. So only these organizations, the 5 organs of UN, 16 specialized agencies of the UN family or the affiliated organizations, can go to the ICJ for advisory proceedings. That is, they can seek an advice on a legal issue, legal opinions from the International Court of Justice. So that is how these contentious cases and advisory proceedings work. Now coming to the part of judgment, again, which is very important for the current affairs news which we are reading as well. So the judgment. In case of contentious cases, the judgment which is given by ICJ is final and binding on both the parties. So it is final and binding on the parties to the case, and the judgment is there without any appeal. That is, the parties can't appeal against the judgment. Now, you must have heard of this International Court of Justice in a lot of cases. For example, the very famous Kulbhushan Yadav case. In that case also, ICJ became very popular. And the second issue, the Chagos Archipelago, right, where the contention between Mauritius and United Kingdom was there. And currently between South Africa and Israel, where South Africa has accused Israel of committing genocide crimes. So in relation to that, you must have heard ICJ news. But one criticism of ICJ which comes time and again is that the judgment given by ICJ is in a way not having a very tangible effect. The reason for that is that here we saw judgment in contentious cases is final and binding. But it is only final and binding if both of the parties agree to it. If the one party says that I don't agree to the judgment of the ICJ and I don't follow the judgment of the ICJ, in that case it might not be binding to that particular party, right? So that is why sometimes the criticism of ICJ is that it is a kind of a toothless organization. And more powers, more tangible powers need to be provided to the ICJ, right? So I hope you understand that whenever we say judgments in the contentious cases are final and binding, it is only in the case when both of the parties agree to the judgment. If they don't agree to the judgment, and if a judgment is against some party, of course they won't agree. And if they don't agree, they won't follow, and it won't be final and binding on them. Right? So in legal discourse, of course, it is final and binding, but in practicality, there are a lot of loopholes in this particular point also. Right? And also these judgments are without any appeal. So if the judgment goes against any particular party, they can't file an appeal against that particular order. So that is your judgments in case of contentious cases. Now in cases of the advisory opinions, so two type of cases we saw, contentious cases and advisory opinions. In case of contentious cases, the judgment is binding and final if both the parties agree. In case of advisory jurisdiction, advisory opinions, the advice given by ICJ, of course, is not binding on the UN specialized agencies or UN organs. The advices are not binding. And the question is that how does this ICJ decides the disputes? So where is the manual? Which manual does ICJ follows, right? So ICJ decides the disputes on the basis of international laws. Now there is no rule book for the international law which ICJ follows, but there is a accumulation of a lot of things which formulates your international laws. And all of these things keeping together, ICJ follows. So ICJ, of course, takes into mind the international law. And in order to understand the international law, ICJ goes for your international conventions which have been existing. So international conventions are taken into account for deciding the disputes. Then international customs are taken into account. Then the general principles of law, which have been recognized by the civilized nations, they are also taken into account. The judicial decisions and the writs of highly qualified experts on international law, that is also taken into account. So international conventions, international customs, general principles of law recognized by the civilized nations, these things are taken into account. And also the judicial decisions and the writs of the highly qualified experts on international law, they are taken into account while taking a decision on the disputes. So all of these things ICJ takes into account while deciding the disputes. Now coming to the composition of ICJ, which is again very important for us to understand. International Court of Justice, it is composed of 15 judges. Now these 15 judges of course will come from different countries and they are elected. Now they are elected for what is the tenure? They are elected for 9 years at a stretch. And they are elected by whom? They are elected by your United Nations General Assembly and UN Security Council. So UN Security Council and United Nations General Assembly together elect the 15 judges of International Court of Justice. And they are to be elected by absolute majority of votes in both UNGA and UNSC. So there should be absolute majority of votes in United Nations General Assembly and Security Council in order for the judge to be elected. And 1/3 of the judges which are there, for example, the 5 judges which are there, they are renewed every 3 years. So tenure is 9 years, of course, and every 3 years, 1/3 of the judges are renewed, right? And of course, if they are eligible for re-election. Now, if a question comes, statement-based questions, that ICJ judges are not eligible for re-election, that would be wrong. Because now we know that International Court of Justice, the judges which are there, they can be re-elected for another term of 9 years. So they are eligible for re-election. And there are conditions also that once they are elected, they are neither the delegates of the government of their country nor of any other state or country. So the ICJ judges, they are not the delegates of their country. They are not the representatives of the country, right? They are just the judges of International Court of Justice which have been elected by the General Assembly and the Security Council. They are not the delegates of their country. This is one thing which we need to understand. And if they are not the delegates, they are independent judges altogether. So they are the independent judges whose first task is to mark solemn declaration in the open court and exercise the powers impartially and consciously, right? So this is very important for us to understand that they are independent judges in nature and they need to exercise the power impartially and keeping a conscience in mind, right? So the power should be exercised in a prudent manner, in a truthful manner. That is what the ICJ statute also says. So I hope this International Court of Justice is very clear to you. Now, time and again, this ICJ comes in news and a lot of differentiation of ICJ with International Criminal Court. That also comes. So we might cover International Criminal Court in the further lectures if it comes in news, right? But whatever is in relation to the International Court of Justice, it is very, very clear for us. Now let's move on to the second topic. So the second topic is in relation to the foreign investments coming into our country. Now, why foreign investments is in news? Because foreign investment in the real estate sector, one of the very prominent sector of Indian economy, they are down by 30% in the financial year 2023. So in that particular year, the real estate sector investment, they've been down by 30%. Now, once we see the data, we will also see that in the last 5 years, from 2017 to 2020, right? From 2017 to 2022, the real estate sector saw a very huge jump of the foreign direct investments. But why they are down in the year 2023, we'll see the reasons for that as well. So in relation to our General Studies Paper 3 Indian Economy, this topic foreign investment becomes very, very important. Now starting with a very prominent question that what are these foreign investments? Now for a country like India, so let's consider India as our home country, right? Now if India is our home country, any investment, any sort of capital, any money which is coming inside the territory of India, inside the country of India, from foreign, that is from abroad, from other countries, is what we call as foreign investment, right? Now, of course, these foreign investment, based on by whom it is done, they're categorized into various types. There is foreign direct investment, there is foreign institutional investment, foreign portfolio investment, right? A lot of foreign investments are there, but foreign investments primarily means that any company outside India, any individual outside India, or any corporation or any institution outside India, they put in money into our country for generating returns. So we understand the term investment as well, that you put in some money with the virtue of expectation of some returns, right? So foreign investment, if someone from the foreign territory, foreign land, from abroad is putting in money to India by the virtue of expecting certain returns from India, right? That is what you call as foreign investment. And specifically, if we talk about the real estate sector, so real estate sector attracts 26.6 billion in the foreign investments in over 5 years from 2017 to 2022. So from 2017 to 2022, the real estate sector, they attracted $26.6 billion in investments, foreign investments, right? Which is again a very, very huge amount. But recently, the foreign direct investment or the foreign investment in this real estate sector has seen a dip. Okay, so first of all, foreign investment in India, they can usually be done through two routes. One is, of course, the automatic route. That is, the company comes to India, they directly invest into a company in India or directly invest into a business in India and they are good to go. That is foreign investment through automatic route, right? Now, there is also foreign investment through approval route, through the government route, through the approval route. Now, this is under three conditions. Under the condition of investment in restricted activities. Now, there are certain strategic areas where the investment, foreign investment is restricted. In that case, if a foreign firm has to invest in that particular area, they have to come through the government approval route. Second case is investment exceeding the sectoral caps. So let's say government puts in sectoral caps for different sectors. For example, food processing industry, sectoral cap, let's say government is having of the 50% or 49% or 45%, any of the sectoral cap. For example, in insurance company or in banking, right? Government is having sectoral caps that foreign investment can't exceed beyond a certain limit. But if the foreign investment has to exceed beyond a certain limit, it has to go through the government route. That is the approval route. And also investment in downstream subsidiaries. So in that case as well, the government route or the government approval route will be applicable. So there are two routes, automatic and governmental approval route. Now, if we see the data from this particular graph, we will be able to see that in 2020, 21 and 22, the FDIs into our country, foreign direct investments into our country, has been consistently more than $50 billion, which is a very, very huge amount, which suggests that FDI inflows in our country has been increasing over the last many years. But in the current news, we saw that one particular sector, it saw a decline in the FDIs. So what are the reasons for it? We'll be understanding. But before that, let us understand what are the positives and the benefits of your foreign investments to a country. So how will a country gain? Of course, the foreign investor, they'll be gaining in terms of the return which they get. That is why they are putting in money into any of the countries, right? But what will the country earn? Why India so eagerly wants more foreign investors to come into our country? More people from outside the country to invest money into our country. What are the reasons for that? What are the benefits for India? That we need to understand. See, first, if the foreign capital is coming into our country, foreign investment is coming into our country. Investment, we always know that it is having a multiplier effect. That means if you invest 1 rupees, it can give you the returns to the tune of 10 rupees. That is the multiplier effect. And if that multiplier effect works for the economy, it will work for Indian economy as well, right? So if capital is being put, doesn't matter from inside or outside. If the outside capital also is put into our country, will our GDP growth will be higher? Yes, it will be higher. Will our GDP per capita increase? Yet it will. Yes, it will increase. So eventually, a economic growth scenario comes if the FDIs or the foreign investments in a country are at a rising trajectory. So economic growth wise, it will be helping us. Then linkages and spillover to the domestic firms. So the linkage of the domestic firms with the foreign firms, with the foreign investors, that linkage will also increase because of the foreign investment. And also technology diffusion and knowledge transfer. So if, let's say, a foreign institution, or let's say a foreign company, they invest in India, or they open the subsidiary in India, right? And if they open a subsidiary in India, they open a MNC in India, multinational corporation in India, a branch of their company in India, will they come up with their own technology as well? Yes. And is the West having, the Western countries, they're having good level of technology? Yes, they're having good level of technology. Are they having good level of knowledge? Yes, they are having good level of knowledge. So if they're coming into our country with the subsidiary, opening a subsidiary, or opening any of the MNC in our country by investing money, will they come up with that technology and knowledge into our country? The answer is yes. And if that happens, technology diffusion in our country will increase. The technological levels of our country are going to be rising, and the knowledge transfer will also be ensured, right? So these are the benefits which are there existing because of the foreign investment coming into our country. Now, also in relation to trade also, if foreign investments are coming, of course, the economic relationship between both the countries are going to be good. If economic relations between two countries are going to be good, trade relation will also have a positive impact. The two countries might sign a bilateral trade agreement, might sign a free trade agreement, right? So in trade aspects as well, foreign investments play a very vital role. Employment and skill levels. So let's say $1 billion a company is investing in India. If the company is investing $1 billion, let's say Microsoft. Now, if Microsoft plans to invest $1 billion in India, of course, they'll be opening some subsidiaries. They'll be opening some offices in India. They'll be hiring some people. So will the employment level in our country, that is the home country, rise? Yes, employment levels are going to rise. And if they're coming into our country, employing people, will they impart them with the skills also? Yes, they will impart them with skills through the training modules. If that happens, will the skill levels of people in our country rise? Yes, the skill levels of the people in our home country are also going to be increasing. So which again shows that foreign investment will be helpful in employment and skill generation in a country. So all these points suggests us that foreign investment is very vital for any economy. But there is a flip side to it as well, which again many of the experts argue. Many of the experts say that if we depend too much on foreign investment, we might be becoming totally dependent on them and stop relying on our own existing capacities. We might not build our own existing capacities. And if that happens, there might be a time when the foreign investment will be higher than the domestic investment into our economy. And eventually, the foreign powers will start dictating the economy of a particular country. Now, that is a very bad sign for economy. That is why we need to properly regulate the foreign investment as well. Since we have had a colonial past, we have seen East India Company coming into our country, colonizing our country and making us basically work for them, right? So we are I would say, very prudent in that way, that we understand the power which the foreign investment holds, right? So we might use it in a better way, right? It is, of course, it's a very powerful tool for economic development, economic prosperity, but it can have a flip side to it as well, right? Like in the case of fire, right? So fire can be used to cook as well, and fire can be used to destroy as well, right? It depends on how we use fire, how we tame fire, right? So it depends on how we tame foreign investments, how we use foreign investments. It can basically make a country dependent also, make a country redundant also, but it can also benefit a country in a way that it can lead to economic prosperity, increase in living standards. So there is a very thin line of difference between that. And it depends on the governmental policy that which line we want to follow. Of course, government is having a lot of regulations, but good level of regulations which are required. So foreign investment is not overly regulated, but it is optimally regulated in our country, right? So now let us understand the types of foreign investments which exist. So we'll be primarily discussing of the two types, FPI and FDI. And also the third type is there, foreign institutional investors, right? Now coming to the foreign portfolio investment. Now FPI and foreign institutional investment, it refers to investment in the stocks, the bonds and the other assets which are available in the stock exchanges. So portfolio investment, that is investment in the portfolio, stock portfolio. If let's say any foreign authority, anyone from the abroad, anyone from the foreign country, they're investing in the stocks, that is the share market, that is the bonds, the financial market into our country through stock exchanges for any financial gain and short term return, we call it as foreign portfolio investment. And if that same foreign portfolio investment is done by an institution in abroad, we call it as foreign institutional investment. And they are usually done by investment banks, financial institutions, or private equity players, right? And it is a kind of a passive involvement in the company. That means they don't actively get involved in the company, they invest their money in, but they are passively involved. That is, they are at the back seat. And the aim of this is to generate a return for their client. For example, there is a very prominent example like HSBC Bank, which is involved in Indian market, investing in Indian market on behalf of Tom Cruise, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, securities are easily bought and sold in this foreign portfolio investment and FII case. And there is a quick return orientation in foreign portfolio investment. That is, they seek they seek quick returns. And they are volatility inducing. Since they are seeking quick returns and it is easily bought and sold, so they can induce volatility into the share market or the stock market as well. I hope FII and FPI is very clear to you. Now coming to the real deal, that is FDI, foreign direct investment. Now this means that the large MNCs, large institutions or venture capital firms, they are investing into a particular country with a strategic interest in mind. So let's say a very big player, or let's say a small player as well, which is abroad, invests into a company, into our country, having a strategic interest into mind with a long-term investment goal. So long-term investment goal is there. That is why it is more favorable for a country. And they get actively involved in the operations and the decision makings of the company. So let's say I have a small company in India, and let's say Microsoft invests money in that particular company. And Microsoft gives us very substantial share. Let's say 20-30% of the shares of my company, Microsoft buys, right? So 20-30% ownership of my company, Microsoft buys by giving in the investment, right? So invests into my company. In that way, Microsoft is doing foreign direct investment because they'll be, of course, involved in the operations and the decision making of my company, and that investment is a long-term investment. It's not that Microsoft will put in money today and the next week they will pull off the money. It is a long-term investment. That is your foreign direct investment. And there are certain methods for it. Method is joint venture. That means you jointly start a venture, my company, Indian company, and some foreign company, we jointly start a venture in India only. So that means the foreign company had to invest certain money in India, right? That is how joint venture will be started. For example, Maruti Suzuki, you must have seen. Or let's say merger and acquisition. So let's say a foreign Microsoft company, let's say, buys my small tech startup, which is there in India. That is the acquisition. They acquire that startup. Or let's say I merge my company with Microsoft, which is a very small company. So Microsoft, there will be no tangible change to it, right? So acquisition and merger, or opening a subsidiary company. So Microsoft opens, let's say, a subsidiary in India, and let's call it anything XYZ. That is also foreign investment in that particular country, right? So these are the methods whereby foreign investment into an economy takes place. Now, what are the examples for it? For example, in 2018, Walmart acquired 77% stake in the Flipkart, which is again a form of your FDI investment. Or your Canada's Pension Fund Investment Board, it contributed 1200 crores in the IPOs of several Indian companies, which includes your 197 Communications, that is the Paytm, which includes Zomato, which includes FSN e-commerce ventures, that is your Nykaa, and which also includes your PB Fintech. So close to the tune of 1200 crores have been put by Canadian Pension Fund Investment Board in the IPO of these companies. And again, it is a strategic investment. It is a long-term investment. And of course, this Canada Pension Fund Investment Board will be having some say, some decision-making power in the operations of that particular company in which they are investing in. That is your foreign direct investment. So I hope this FPI, FII, FDI, they're very, very clear to all of you. Now coming to the third topic, that is applications of artificial intelligence. The BCG AI Radar report recently have suggested that 85% of the companies are planning to increase their spending on artificial intelligence and general AI. So in relation to that, the applications associated with artificial intelligence and why a lot of companies are moving towards artificial intelligence, investing in artificial intelligence, that becomes very important for us to understand. Of course, in relation to our general studies paper 3, Science and Technology, this topic becomes highly, highly important. Now, first thing which we need to understand is what is this artificial intelligence? Now, you must have heard of something known as human intelligence, right? Human intelligence means that human brain is able to perform certain functions, perform various tasks based on the brain's activity, based on human's intelligence. Now, if that same human intelligence induced tasks are happening in the cases of machines, human made machines, that means machines are using intelligence like humans in order to perform certain functions, perform certain tasks. That intelligence of the machines is what we call as artificial intelligence. That is, it is artificially created. Our intelligence is natural intelligence, right? So intelligence of the machinery, in order to perform same task as compared to the humans, we call it as machine intelligence or artificial intelligence. So the formal definition, it is the field of science, of course, with concerns building computers, machines that can reason, learn, and act. That means perform actions, functions like humans. So reason, learn, and act in a way that would normally require human intelligence. That is what your artificial intelligence is. Of course, the application of AI is there in a lot of sections, a lot of sectors. That is why a lot of companies are planning to invest in artificial intelligence. So healthcare startups, education startups, robotics startup, of course, fintech startups, marketing startups, content writing startups, a lot of these startups are planning to invest in artificial intelligence because it is having broad spectrum of applications. Now, coming to the healthcare aspect, of course, application of AI involves medical diagnosis, so helping in medical diagnosis. AI robots can help in that. Treatment planning, artificial intelligence tools can help in that. Drug development, personalized medicine to the patient, artificial intelligence can help in that way. Now, coming to the education, so your AI powered chatbots, your virtual assistants, they can provide personalized learning experience to the students. So whole learning landscape can be changed. In relation to your finance also, in case of fraud detection, knowing your credit score, analyzing the levels of investment, artificial intelligence can be a very prominent tool. In case of marketing and advertising, now how in marketing and advertising, profiling of the customers, generating data, crunching the data, then a data analysis, market segmentation, targeting advertising. Now, in case of transportation as well, it can help in the mapping part, optimizing the traffic flow, that where the cars should be running, right? Where the traffic is less, where the traffic is more, what should be the optimal route, improving the road safety, developing autonomous vehicles, which Tesla is of course doing, right? Then agriculture as well. So your crop monitoring, yield prediction, precision farming in that way, or providing the farmers with a level of information that how they can improve the yield. In all these cases, applications of intelligence, artificial intelligence can be very broadly seen. And there are certain benefits and concerns associated with AI. Of course, the benefit includes that artificial intelligence is more efficient, it is more accurate, its speed will be higher, it will save a lot of costs, and it will be innovative in nature. Right? All of these things, of course, are the benefits of artificial intelligence, but there are some concerns related to it as well. Many people apprehend or are having the apprehensions that artificial intelligence might lead to job losses, huge job losses. That was the apprehension of people when the computers were also launched, when these calculators were also launched, right? When mobile phones, smartphones were also launched, apprehensions of people would be there. In case of artificial intelligence, also still people are having apprehension that job losses, huge layoffs will be there. Of course, layoffs will be there, but there will be new jobs which will be generating, which I will be generating. Now, in case of certain biases, so development of biases, these are the concerns which we hear in the case of Chat GPT, Bard AI as well, that they are inherently having certain biases which gets reflected in the basically the prompt which they give to them and in the return content which they give to us, right? That there are certain biases including in that response which they give. Lack of transparency. See, because most of the people don't know how these AI generation works, right? Or this, how generative AI works, how language artificial intelligence tool works, right? So there is a bit of opaqueness in that way. And there is lack of transparency in that respect as well. Concern related to privacy and security. Now, since artificial intelligence tools, there are some tools are language models as well. They get a lot of information from us, they process that information and give us a response. They're having access to a lot of personalized information of humans, how we think, what work we do, right? What information we require on daily basis. If used properly, of course, it can benefit us. But if used in a negative way, it can be very harmful for our privacy and security, and also unintended consequences. Now, as Elon Musk, the Tesla founder, right, the Tesla owner, he's also having a lot of apprehensions that if AI is not regulated, in future AI is having the power to basically control humans, right, and to surpass humans in intelligence levels and start controlling humans. So Elon Musk, the Tesla founder, and a lot of SpaceX founder as well, is having those apprehensions, which is again a cause of concern for us. So AI regulation is very, very important. So what is the way forward? We need to understand. See, regulation should be there, but regulation should be empowering. We must empower artificial intelligence, but we should not let artificial intelligence go out of the hand of humans. There should be ethical guidelines associated with it. There should be proper laws, proper regulations, standards, certifications, guidelines needs to exist. Proper risk assessment should be there. Adequate rules and laws must be framed for regulating artificial intelligence. Public education and engagement in relation to artificial intelligence, again, it is very, very important. Now, coming to the last topic, that is your EPFO. Now, recently, the government has reconstituted the Central Board of Trustees of EPFO. Now, in relation to that, we'll be trying to understand what is this organization all about, what are the functions of it, and what is the composition of it. In relation to General Studies Paper 2, where statutory, regulatory, and quasi-judicial body, as are mentioned, EPFO becomes very, very important. Why? Because EPFO is a statutory body. So starting with the EPFO introduction. So as we know, it is a statutory body under which act? Under your Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Act of 1952. And the Ministry of Labour and Employment is having administrative control over this EPFO. Now coming to the structuring of this EPFO. So it's administered by one board, one tripartite board, that is a Central Board of Trustees. Now, this Central Board of Trustees, it includes representatives of the government, your central and state government both, and also representatives from your employees and employers. Now, what we need to understand that in the current news, this Central Board of Trustees have been reconstituted by the government, and several organizations' representatives have been kept out of it, right? So this has been reconstituted. And who's chairing this particular board, Central Board of Trustees, who's basically governing the EPFO operations? It is chaired by your Union Minister of Labour and Employment. Why? Because it comes under the Union Ministry of Labour and Employment. That is why the Minister of Labour and Employment, it is the chair of this particular board, Central Board of Trustees. Now, the Central Board of Trustees, it is operating in three schemes in relation to EPFO. First is, of course, your Employees Provident Fund Scheme of 1952, EPF scheme. Then there is Employees Pension Scheme, EPS 1995. And also there is Employees Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme. That is your EDLI 1976. So these are the three schemes. First is Provident Fund Scheme, second is Pension Scheme, third is Deposit Linked Insurance Scheme. In all these schemes, CBT, that is Central Board of Trustees, is working, right? And also it is a nodal agency for implementing the bilateral social security agreements between the two countries. If a bilateral social security agreement exists, then this EPFO, it's the nodal agency for implementing that as well. And it becomes the nodal agency, of course, in reciprocal basis. And the coverage of it, as we know, that the schemes under the EPFO, it covers Indian workers and international workers as well. Indian workers, we know it covers, but international workers in which case? In case of the countries with whom the EPFO have signed a bilateral agreement. So if the question comes, if an option comes, if a statement comes that EPFO is only concerned with Indian workers, that statement would be wrong. Because EPFO is concerned with Indian workers and international workers both. So I hope this is very, very clear to all of you, and I hope you learned something from this lecture. So all the very best and have a very nice day.